Hello and welcome to the Lee Enochs Show, America's most controversial podcast. On today's episode, the golf tour and fake news. Lee, what's going on in the world today?
Well, as Ed Sullivan, this is before your time. Actually, it's probably before my time too. Ed Sullivan used to say, "We got a really big shoe today." Yeah, we got a big show today. A lot of issues in the news. Ryan, we're going to talk a little bit about sports today. Okay, NBA Finals. Looks like Golden State's probably going to win this series. I don't know what you think about that, but
Yeah, Game 5 was a big win. If Boston had any chance, they needed Game 5, and they collapsed. And they looked like a team that had been to the finals for the first time versus a Warriors team that had been 3 or 4 times. So I think the inexperience showed, and it's going to be hard to take 2 games in a row off the Warriors.
also Curry was 0 for 9 for the 3-point line, and they still won. Wiggins stepped up big time.
0 for 9. Yeah, but anytime Curry shoots 0 for 9, and I think I believe the Warriors only made 9 3-pointers for the entire game. If you can't win off of that, you're done. It's over.
Wow. Anyways, we're going to talk about this new Super Golf League, or 54 Golf. I guess it's for the 54 holes in golf that's named after it.
Yep. Only 3 rounds in this particular tour as opposed to the 4 rounds. So 3 rounds of 18 holes would be 54 as opposed to the 72 they play on the PGA Tour.
Man, I thought I knew about something about sports until I met Ryan. I'm just like carrying your golf clubs around.
You're my caddy.
I'm your sports caddy.
Yeah.
Anyways, so here's the take. Ryan, maybe you just talked about this on your podcast. Basically, I'm going to interview you for a second.
Sure.
So what's going on? Talk to me about what is the controversy going on with this new golf league? There's a lot of things in the news, like it's wrong to play for this Saudi Arabian-backed league, and I don't see it that way. What's your take on it?
So the PGA Tour, for the longest time, has been the top flight for professional golf, really across the world. Definitely in America, but you see a lot of worldwide golfers come over to the tour to play. And recently, this 54 tour, or LIV Tour, as I like to call it, because it's the Roman numerals LIV, is backed by Saudi Arabian money. And the purses for the 54 tour are all on the top end of what the PGA Tour is on average. So it's $20 million for the 54 tour, and the top end PGA Tour purses are $20 million. Sometimes those weekly tournaments go down to a $3 million purse. So it's undeniable that this 54 tour has better money available to it. Now, here's where things get interesting, because 17, I believe it's up to 17 now, PGA Tour golfers have moved over to the 54
Major
tour.
guys like Phil Mickelson.
Former number ones, major tournament winners. Dustin Johnson is in there. Sergio Garcia is in there. These are big names. And they have moved over, and the PGA Tour has suspended them, saying if you play in the 54 Tour, you are suspended from the PGA Tour. The main issue is the 4 biggest golf tournaments in the world, really.
Let me see if I can name some of them. You get the PGA 4. Championship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the Masters,
mm-hmm.
and then, man, see my sports.
You have
I crumbled right there.
Yeah, the U.S. Open, and then just the Open, which is played over in the U.K. on St. Andrews. So those 4 are not, even though the PGA Tour makes time during the season, the misconception is the PGA Tour runs these major tournaments. They don't. They're 4 private tournaments run by individual entities. Sometimes it's the course, sometimes it's a sponsored company. So, for example, the U.S. Open is this week.
And Phil Mickelson can be in that tournament.
All the 54 tour players can be in there because it's an open tournament. Either you've won a previous Open, so you are automatically qualified in, or you can qualify in the qualifying rounds. But it's an open tournament. So then the question is, what's the downside to going to the 54 tour as opposed to the PGA Tour? If you can make better money over in the 54 tour and still compete in these major tournaments, the 4 major tournaments, then there's really no downside to playing in the 54 tour as opposed to the PGA Tour. at least from a money and golf perspective.
Well, here's the real issue, and this is why I brought it up for me as a political guy. So we have issues about Saudi Arabia, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. He controls this fund,
Mhm.
this Saudi fund that backs this tournament, or this golf league.
Yes.
Okay, and he was involved in some degree. Some people said he was the mastermind of the assassination of that Washington Post journalist a few years ago, Khashoggi, I guess the name is. And they dismembered him, Ryan. And now that was a Trump issue too. I think Trump should have got involved in that a little bit more than they did. You know, Biden even said that he was going to make Saudi Arabia a pariah state. And last week he kind of went against that, and he's back in good graces of Saudi Arabia. I mean, Saudi Arabia has a lot of money. Okay, now they've had some human rights abuses in the past. Now, one of the issues and the reason why I'm bringing this up is the issue of 9/11. Several people that are against this new league, or at least PGA players playing in this league, have brought up the issue of 9/11 assassins, or terrorists that were involved. That 15 of the 19 people were Saudi Arabian. Osama bin Laden himself, from what I understand, was Saudi Arabian, and they say, well, there's some kind of they're bringing up those issues, like Saudi Arabia is tainted, and we should have no involvement with them. Even what's the guy, Rory
McIlroy?
He brought that up. He says a sketchy league with a sketchy government. I mean, there's been some major stuff going against Saudi Arabia. Now, wow, when you talk about human rights abuses, China. I mean, we're going to have to bring that up, about the issue of the Chinese government, like suppressing, taking over Hong Kong, issues of human rights abuses in different groups there in China. Should the NBA be involved, in China? So I think, honestly, Ryan, that the issue here is money. In a famous sports movie, Jerry Maguire, Cuba Gooding Jr. said, "Jerry, show me the money." I really don't think that it's an issue of Saudi Arabia might have been involved in human rights abuses. It's just that the PGA doesn't want their money flow somehow affected, and that's why they're raising these issues as a cover. What do you think?
I think if you look at sports in general, and especially if you start with the NFL, because that's the biggest sports league, they're not classified as a sports league. They are classified as being in the entertainment industry. So when you look at it that way, yes, you can say anything you want about being fair and have the athletes performing on the same level and everybody should get the same. But in the entertainment industry, that's just not how it works. They are there to make money first and foremost. And that trickles down to all these leagues. These leagues, since they're at the top of their game and there's nothing to challenge them, they are first and foremost moneymakers. They put on a show. That's what they're there for. The sport you see on the court is nothing more than a show. It's for entertainment purposes. So, yes, it all comes down to money. And I think it's easy for us to say as individuals that aren't in a situation where it comes down to millions of dollars, yes, you should not go play, for a tour that's funded by a country that has all these human rights violations and allegations. But it's different when you are in that position and you have the opportunity to provide for your family and your children's children, making $20 million, possibly $20 million on a different tour as opposed to the PGA Tour, especially because some of these mid-tier golfers may not have a chance on the PGA Tour, and they're mid-tier, so they're not going to win as many events. But if you're not going to win as many events, you'd rather be playing in tournaments that have a higher purse because you get a bigger cut of money for the same placing. You know what I mean? Like 10th place in a $3 million purse is going to earn significantly less than 10th place in a $20 million purse. So it's easy for us as individuals to say, yeah, you shouldn't do that when we're not in that situation. And my other thought is, if you are going, I don't care what opinion you have on it, I will respect your opinion either way. Just be consistent. If you have issues with Saudi Arabia's human rights violations and allegations and this 54 tour, you should have a major issue with the NBA and their constant dealings with China. Straight up. That you should just be consistent. I don't care what your opinion is, just be consistent on it because otherwise you're blindly and willingly and ignorantly looking at just one side of it and not at everything else.
I'm an economic libertarian. And what I mean by that is I want the least amount of government or external control into my economic affairs as possible. Okay, that's pure libertarianism. Okay, economic and individual liberty. When I was reading this stuff, these guys are saying I'm going to go and make money for my family. I'm all for that.
Mhm.
And yes, there's moral considerations, but this is an issue of the government. I'm not certain if the 9/11 thing has been proven that the Saudi Arabian government itself was the mastermind behind, 9/11. I know that 15 of the 19 terrorists were Saudi Arabian, but Saudi Arabia is a big country. Perhaps, Osama bin Laden, he had a lot of money at the time. He convinced people to join him in that, but was that really the Saudi Arabian government? I don't know if I have the knowledge to deliberate on that issue.
I think that a lot of what is coming out from the players' mouths recently is a byproduct of social media. Just because on topics like this, you can search Twitter and find probably 30 different articles about the tour and what Saudi Arabia has or has not done, different information on it. But no one is actually, I mean, it's on Twitter, right? Who is fact checking all this stuff on Twitter? So you could read something that says, yeah, the Saudi government was directly responsible for 9/11 on the internet. And if you just take that as gospel, then yeah, you're going to spout that off because you think it's true, whether it's been, properly vetted or not. So I think that's just another issue with the age of social media and the 24-hour news cycle is you end up with this, with players spouting off stuff that may or may not be true.
Yeah, and here's my issue as the guy that has studied political science at a high level in grad school. Okay, if you're going to be making these claims, and these guys are great golfers. I mean, they could destroy me in pretty much any sport. Okay, but when you're going to start making political claims, I'm going to fact check you. Okay, and Rory, I'm sorry, doesn't seem like he's a scholar in political science. Okay, he was saying a lot of stuff, sketchy league, sketchy human rights abuses. But man, I'm just not certain. I want to listen to you. I remember when 9/11 happened. This is kind of before your time, Ryan. You're a young guy, but I remember what Dave Chappelle said something on his show that Ja Rule, the famous rapper singer, was one time there was a show on TV and it was interrupted because Ja Rule wanted to make a statement about the 9/11 bombing. And Dave Chappelle goes, man, I love Ja Rule. I love his music, but do I really want to hear what he has to say? Is he the best person at this time to hear about the political take on this situation? I mean, Rory's a great guy, but is he the guy that we really want to go to about Saudi Arabia? I mean, the issue here is I just don't think there's evidence that the Saudi Arabian government was particularly involved in the 9/11 bombings. Okay. Also, this is the issue of the government. Now, the government wants to get involved and say there's this Khashoggi killing as an issue to put sanctions on Saudi Arabia. That's another story. There's a great argument for that. I think it was heinous what happened to him, and I mean, there could be good evidence. I mean, I looked into the whole situation. We can't break it all down. That the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia could have been involved in that. Okay, but that's another. There's some students here. There are Saudi Arabian students on campus. They're my friends. They say he wasn't. So this is a big debate. So before we close, I mean, I didn't want to take up the whole show based on golf, but it's a big issue in politics. I want to talk about the issue of fake news. I have an op-ed out this week in North Texas Daily on the issue of fake news and the future of journalism in America. The issue of fake news, fabricated stories that are false, that are passed off as true, has been an issue that's taken place throughout the history of humanity. As I studied the issue of fake news, it's gone on forever. I didn't know this, but you've heard the story where Emperor Nero of Rome, uh, fiddled, played his fiddle when Rome burned. They say that he wasn't even in Rome at the time. Historians, I mean, there's been fake news accounts. A big one happened during World War One. There was a fake news report that was put out by the British that the Germans were using dead bodies to create oil for lubricant during World War One, and it stirred people up so angry. Now I want to tell you something right here. This is the Lee Enoch Show, America's most controversial podcast. Some people say, "Man, this is kind of your show is milquetoast," in comparison to some things that are out there. But I'm going to get into something that's controversial. I do not believe that there were weapons of mass destruction. You want to talk about one of the biggest fake news events in the history of the world? It was the issue of sending American troops into Iraq. Okay, there were no weapons of mass destruction. Clearly, even Bush says it now. Oh, I made a mistake. Whoops. Well, you know what? Hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians died in collateral damage because of a stupid mistake by Bush and guys like Tony Blair. That's fake news, and there's the consequences to fake news. It's throughout the media today. There are fake news accounts. Recently, something happened to a major news entity here in Texas contacted me. They wanted me to write a story about the Southern Baptist issue. I had a different take on them. I wrote a 2,500 word op-ed. I'm a busy guy. 2,500 words. When I got it back from their edit, Ryan, it completely changed what I wrote. I would say 70% of it had nothing to do with anything that I had been involved in. They created a fake news story and put it in my mouth, and I am completely opposed to that. Basically, they had me doing things, seeing movies that I had never saw before, completely altered my story to implicate the Southern Baptist Convention in a way that I would never have done. And it was fake news. So the issue of fake news is something we all in journalism and the media need to be careful about, not just running with a story that's out there, but fact check and be very, very accurate in all that we report. And those things are taking place. Another issue before we close is the issue of the security of Supreme Court justices. In another op-ed that I have out is, and it was very prescient or prophetic, Ryan, and I wrote last week, and it's in North Texas Daily now, that I thought it was inappropriate that these protesters were showing up at the homes in the neighborhoods of Supreme Court justices and blocking their paths of being able to park their cars, disturbing neighbors. Several neighbors of like Kavanaugh and different conservative justices have been disturbed by these protesters. And I wrote that before I knew about the guy that threatened the life of Kavanaugh, Judge Brett Kavanaugh. He threatened to murder him. The guy's been arrested on allegedly making murderous threats against a Supreme Court justice. I just believe that I'm all for protesting. The issue of Roe versus Wade is a very important issue. Okay, I'm for your First Amendment rights, but there's got to be some kind of buffer zone, some kind of place where these Supreme Court justices can have free access to their home, and their kids and their neighbors can have to be protected and be safe. And so there's been some legislation passed, and it's going to go before Biden's desk to be signed to protect Supreme Court justices in the same way that other politicians and presidents are protected. This is the Lee Enoch Show, and I always want to debate the truth and love. Thank you to Ryan for his great knowledge in sports, and we'll talk to you next time.